The Viking Age lasted for about 200 years and came to a close in the same year that the Norman invasion of Great Britain brought an end to Anglo-Saxon Danish control of the island. 1066. During this time, the Vikings spread across the world, from the far reaches of Russia to the eastern coast of North America. The Vikings made their mark on nearly every region and civilization they touched. They then quickly disappeared with their people's conversion to Christianity, and their light was snuffed out. And it would now seem that their inheritors, at least in Sweden, a nation that once produced the most fearsome and brutal warriors of all Vikings, is now all but a nation that is on its hands and knees and ashamed of its own existence, and looks that it might just be repeating this national vanishing act of old. This video is sponsored by Vikings. I've said it before that I really liked the real-time strategy games of yesteryear, and you can find a game just like that for your cell, and the graphics are amazing. Vikings, War of Clans. You can choose your own gameplay style, build your economy, and smash castles. Guys, by installing the game, you not only help me to create quality videos, but you'll definitely like Vikings as well. Support my channel, download Vikings from the links below, and get 200 gold and an initial protection shield for free. So go on, download Vikings now. All across Europe, God-fearing folk moan the same prayer. Deliver us, O Lord, from the fury of the Norsemen. They ravage our lands, they kill our women and children. The world of the 8th and 9th century was violent, but the Vikings, it would seem, were no more violent than much of the other groups in Europe at the time. Their attacks on undefended targets for looting was standard for the time. The pillaging of monasteries, as well as potentially vulnerable and lucrative sites, was consistent with the norms of the time. In fact, such places were constantly at the mercy of local warring factions of Christians as much as they were by Vikings, and in response, many of the clergy would themselves become warrior priests and fight with the best of them. The real problem that Christendom had with the Vikings is that they were still pagans, still committed to the gods Odin and Thor, and as a side note, from whence modern English derives the day names of Wednesday and Thursday. The peoples of Scandinavia were the last in Europe to accept Christianity, and as long as they remained heathen, their violence against Christians was in a sense unclean and markedly more of an affront. However, far from being savages bent solely on blood and booty, the Vikings of Scandinavia were cunning, commercially keen, and knew how to win new lands, and, in time, took their place at the top of the European royalty. William of Normandy, or that which belongs to the Norsemen, was a descendant of Vikings, and in 1066 he not only drew a close to the Viking Age, but conquered Great Britain and began England's ascent to greatness. But what was perhaps the most remarkable about the Vikings is how they exited the stage and vanished into the ether of history so quickly and so abruptly. Having cast such a long and fearsome shadow from North America to the Middle East, they quickly, upon converting to Christianity, abandoned their old gods, and in doing so melted into European Christendom, and all of the distinctions that separated the Norsemen from all others evaporated. Their flame burned bright for just over 2 centuries and then went out. And from the point of view of history, they simply vanished, lost in the crowd of Christians. In the Viking Age, the present-day nations of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark didn't exist, but were largely homogeneous and similar in culture and language, although somewhat distinct geographically. And for the Viking descendants in Sweden, they now too look like they might be on the road to their own disappearing act, driven via a drunken sense of altruism and the belief that the abolition of their nation and people is the supreme act of being,
so tolerant.
Sweden likes to pride itself as a moral superpower. However, the exorbitant and ultimately intolerable costs that Sweden has paid and will continue to pay until its collapse for its unshared idealism may in fact be what snuffs out the flame of the nation, culture, and people that was created slowly over the course of the last 900 years or so. And because of the self-censorship as well as the hard and soft censorship against anyone that dares question the narrative that Sweden as well as every other Western country has set itself upon, the chasm between the opinions of the elites and much of the populace is an ancient ocean wide. And to the point of this video, Sweden, which is a nation drunk on collective virtue signaling, is a cautionary tale for anyone who believes that Europe is capable of absorbing the millions of migrants who are besieging the continent, or the hundreds of millions more poised to follow in their wake. The belief that these mostly uneducated, undereducated, skillless, and most not even speaking the language will be able to somehow magically create economic growth and alleviate the Europeans from their demographic decline, as well as pay for those generous social programs they have flocked to receive and enjoy, is a deluded fantasy at best. This isn't rocket science, nor is it profound. You simply cannot combine open borders with a welfare state. If you're offering generous welfare benefits to every citizen and anyone can just arrive and use those benefits, then obviously very large numbers of people will try to do just that, and they are. This isn't mathematically possible for a small country like Sweden, or any country in the West, for that matter, to fund those benefits ad infinitum. So unless something radically changes, whatever the future of Sweden is, it will not be the egalitarian and gender equal society that has become tolerant of everything, including the intolerant, but something very different, at least as different as pagan Vikings were to Christianized Swedes. Being persuaded of the sense of joining and creating an open and borderless world, the Swedes, like most Europeans, have willingly abandoned their old god, this time around Christianity, and have learnt deference instead to the beliefs and customs of those arriving en masse, no matter how contrary they are to their own. And so will the flame that has burned so brightly over the past few centuries go out, and the Swedes, like their Viking forebears, will, from the point of view of history, vanish, lost in the crowd of their cosmopolitan multicultural societies, and will become nothing more than a footnote for future historians. Perhaps the total collapse of the welfare state in Sweden, followed by the inevitable chaos that this will usher in, will be the very real and very needed example, or canary in the coal mine if you like, for other states that are also flirting with their own demographic winters, generous welfare systems, and open borders. Either way, Sweden, yes. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of material, please consider subscribing. Also follow Black Pigeon on the usual social media. Till next time.